Hello travelers, Boardman21 here, and today I wanted to discuss with you my favorite builds in the game. I'm going to give you my top 10 favorite builds. Now, these are not going to be the most powerful builds, they're not going to be the least powerful builds, these are just going to be 10 builds that I enjoy the most and have continued to play and update throughout the patches. A couple of them will be from the most recent patch, possibly things that could not have been done before, such as new skills or new items that have brought into the game that have made them actually doable, viable, or possible. But I get asked this question every stream I do. I get asked in Discord a lot. I get messaged all the time what my favorite build is, and I thought, well, let's just give you all of them. So the next time I'm asked, I can give you the video, it'll have all the links to all of the builds, and even tell you my favorite one, and perhaps you'll even find you have something in common with me, or maybe not. But either way, let's go ahead and get into them, starting with number 10. Coming in at number 10, it is the 6 Crow Beastmaster, and the reason that I enjoy this one so much is, one, the crows do great damage, and because of the damage they do, they have decent survivability, or even good survivability, depending on how much leech you give them. With aspect of the links, they are super tanky, especially if you give them dodge and a lot of health on top of that. Now, they can do some really good damage, even up to 100k crits on the training dummy each once you've really built into them. The reason that I enjoy this build so much is because not only can the crows do really good damage, but they are ranged, which is really nice. We don't have very many ranged good companions for the Beastmaster. Now, the one thing I don't like about this build is the fact that you have to buff them up, which means you're constantly having to run in trying to get a lot of hits. The more hits you get, the more chances you have to buff the companions, and if you buff them too much, they get kills before you can even get the melee hits. But it is still one of my favorite builds because I really enjoy the playstyle of it. I do hope that in the future the Beastmaster himself gets some more survivability, because right now it almost feels like most companions are stronger than him in general. Coming in at number 9, it is the Shatter Strike Spellblade, also known as the Shatter King. Now, recently, they implemented new changes to swords in the game, and this allowed for massive amounts of cold damage on the Shattered Lance set swords. It has like 85 added cold damage on each one. You can dual wield them, and it does absolute bonkers damage, and it does not require you to use Firebrand on top of it. This is just a straight up Shatter Strike hit damage build. So you feel very powerful, you attack very fast. You can play it as high life or as low life, as I am here, and the link for this will be a low life version, but either way you tend to play it, you're going to do great damage and you'll feel really powerful. Again, this one not going to go super high in the arena, it can be a bit squishy, but it is fun just absolutely destroying bosses and empowered content by running around, pushing one key, and letting things just get hit so hard that they instantly die. Coming in at number 8, it is the Bleeding Warpath Paladin. Now you can play it with Doom on hit or without Doom on hit. The version that I link will have Doom in it. You don't have to play with that. Either way, it's still good dot damage. But what I like about this build is you apply bleeds really quick, and they last for a really long time, and you also leech a portion of that damage over time. This allows you to hit mobs, get damage over time, bleed on them, and continue on. And since you're using a channeling skill that is a movement channeling skill, you're always on the move. Now, it can be squishy if you do not have the Wings of Argentus. There are some uniques for the build that can be rather hard to get. You'll have to farm for a while, but it does alright damage. It can clear echoes really quick, especially if you just start warpathing, do the maximum speed, and go from the start to the finish right off the bat. The only thing that I dislike about the build is if you play it for long periods of time, it does get rather boring, as you are just holding down one key the entire time. Throwing in an occasional volatile reversal can kind of juice things up, but for the most part you just keep warpathing and spinning, but it is still rather enjoyable to be able to use a movement skill that channels. Coming in at number 7, it is the Sorcerer Static Orb Obliterator, and this thing does damage, and it probably won't be around next patch, but I hope that Static Orb stays just as good. This one revolves around firing off Static Orb, occasionally double casting it, and then having it explode wherever you point your mouse, and then Spark Nova's just taking over the screen and dealing huge damage. Now, it can be a bit of a squishy build. Luckily, you do have Lightning Aegis and can build into quite a bit of defense and leech because you do such great damage. but you can find yourself dying every now and then. I wouldn't recommend it for hardcore unless you're an experienced player. But the build feels good when the orbs explode and just absolute annihilate everything, including killing some of the toughest bosses in just seconds, which could normally take minutes in a boss fight. And it's very, very satisfying. It can do well in the arena as long as you have your defenses built right, but for the most part, it's just kind of a build to play because it's here right now and it's satisfying to watch everything explode. Coming in at number 6, it is the Big Vine Spriggan Form Shaman Slapper. And the reason this one is so satisfying for me is it's a ranged build. It also has pretty good survivability, but it's more of the fact that you have these giant vines that just slap the crap out of all of the enemies. And you can get a lot of them, almost an unlimited amount, depending on how fast you can cast them. Now, they do have a duration, so when I say unlimited, I do mean 20, 30, maybe 40, depending on your cast speed. But having that many of them is all that you need, and it is hilarious and fun to watch them just absolute slap everything to death. This one does do well in arena, it does do well in empowered content, and when I say well, I mean it's about A tier. I haven't seen an S tier one pop up yet, but it is a good build. You can use it, it is viable, and like I said, super fun to play. Coming in at number 5, it is the Poison Shuriken's Blade Dancer. And the reason that I enjoy this one so much is because, one, I get to wear dual daggers, which reminds me of some fantasy MMORPGs that I've played in the past. It's just kind of a fantasy thing. At the same time, it does a whole lot of damage. You just melt through things with the way that the playstyle is set up, for you to have a whole bunch of hits per second, and for those to apply massive amounts of stacks of poison. It is a really, really good dot build, one of the few dot builds that excel in the end game. It can be very, very squishy. Your life is dependent upon dodge. I would recommend it for skill points, but it is a very zoom build where most of the things you need is procced automatically from you just shifting using a movement skill ahead. But once you've shifted and procced things, you can maximize your damage against single targets by manually casting the shurikens. And as you can see in the gameplay, it is very zoom, very quick, and kills things just on the fly. And for that reason, and for how fast it is, and because it's a dot build, that is why I enjoy it so much, and I typically play this one at least once a week and just mess around with it even more, collecting even better gear for it. Coming in at number 4 is Lizard IRL's Reign of Winter bow build with the marksman. This build is ridiculous. If you've used the Reign of Winter build and got the icicles proccing with the detonating arrow, the tendrils, all the hits that you do, the pierced cone, just the amount of icicles that come out and the damage that they deal, how fast-paced this build is, it's just an absolute screen clearer. It has great AoE and it feels really, really good. It's one of the really new builds. This was just found within a couple of weeks ago, but even with as little playtime as I've played on it, it's just been an amazing experience. It's actually made me like the marksman again. Before this build, I just really didn't enjoy the marksman. I didn't play it very much. We put this one together, and once it was all put together, once we got all the pieces for it, it felt so good that I played it for hours and hours beyond the video that I made for it. So it's a very fun one. I still play it every now and then. I mean, again, it's only been out for a couple weeks. Perhaps I'm just not bored of it yet, but I really like it. I really enjoy it. I like the AoE. I like the quickness of it. It is a very fun build, and I recommend that you give it a try. Coming in at number 3, it's the Ice Ranged Minions for the Necromancer, and if you've played this build, you know how powerful it is. You have a horde of minions, you do really good damage, and you have great survivability, either hiding behind them or fighting alongside them, but either way it's ranged, so you don't have to be in melee range, which increases your survivability, and they do such great damage. You can also throw in the zombies, get tons of ward, which is going to increase your survivability, or you can switch it up and you can change Dreadshade to Taunt, and you can throw the Golem in the mix and have it to where enemies are always chasing your Golem and never have to worry about getting hit. That part is probably going to change. They've already said changes to Taunt is coming, but for now, this is still one of the most powerful minion builds in the game. It is extremely deadly and extremely satisfying to play, and if you've been watching Mike on the dev streams for EHG, this is one of the builds that are very closely related to this, is what he's been playing if you've been watching that, and you can tell it's a very satisfying build to play, just letting your minions absolutely annihilate the screen. Coming in at number 2, it is the Hammerden Paladin. And it's the nostalgia of Diablo 2, remembering the hammers orbiting around you doing great damage. It brings it back, it just feels good. There are some things that I don't like about it, such as the hammers disappearing into objects or disappearing on object collision, but outside of that, the build just feels great. It does great damage, lots of hits, lots of procs, lots of things going on, pretty quick pace, pretty tankable. It's not going to go the highest in corruption or the highest in the arena, but it does go through empowered content relatively easily. It is a very fun build, and if you've given it a try, as many of you have, you know that it's a very fun build to play. You get to lunge from enemy to enemy, spam as many hammers as you can, and then all of those hammers are procking down smites, which just absolutely destroy things. Coming in at number 1 for my favorite build in Last Epoch right now is the Decimator Void Knight. Just Void itself, it's just so appealing to me, but this one has so much purple on the screen. We've got purple balls, devouring orbs, abyssal things, smite coming down in its void conversion. It's just crazy. We have abyssal echoes ringing out and chaining to enemies. Lots and lots of void things happening. Some have referred to it as a meme build just because of how squishy it can be, because your life bounces from full to low to full again, just based on the way that you're consuming some of your own life to have smite do better damage and then leeching that damage back, so you're almost self-sacrificing a little bit of yourself for damage. But overall, it's a very quick-paced build. You can smite and lunge around just through echoes extremely quickly. You can take on bosses. It's not going to push the highest in the arena again. It's not going to be a super high corruption pushing build, but for me it is empowered viable and it feels really good just cruising through the echoes and watching everything just get melted by the power of the void. Alright, that's going to wrap it up for my favorite 10 builds. Which one do you enjoy the most? Have you played any of these? Maybe all of them? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, stay safe, travelers.